What's up, guys? Greetings from Savannah, Georgia, my all-time favorite American town. Before I go further into the subject of this video, I just want to apologize. I know that this is not... Actually, the lighting is pretty great, I must say. But everything else, I mean, you would think that I'm like in some dungeon somewhere. It's very dimly lit. And then this reflection is killing me here on this painting, but I tried to move things around. I don't want to start messing with the hotel, like, you know, decorations, taking paintings off the wall and stuff, but yeah. And if you hear a sound effect, water running, I didn't leave the sink on. There's a fountain. It's actually very nice. There's a courtyard outside, right outside my hotel room. But for making YouTube videos, it's a distraction along with these other elements. But anyway, this is the best setup I could find. Welcome to my quaint hotel room. I'm going kind of like for Southern Gothic aesthetic today. I decided to escape to Savannah for about a week. I wanted a nice, authentic autumn experience before it gets too cold here, and it's been perfect. The weather's been sunny, that crisp, early autumn, you know, windy, crisp in the air. I love Savannah. I've been here 2 or 3 times in the past. It's just very southern, and the southern charm, the southern hospitality, it has that vibe. The architecture is beautiful. The houses in the historic district, that is, and it's so lush. You have the swamp trees with the Spanish moss. I'm just kind of obsessed with Savannah and like this part of the South. We don't love everything about the South, but I love this. So of course, had to make a gay dating in Savannah video. Now, I'm one of those people, anytime I go to the South, I have one of those fantasies of like, I'll run into a Southern gentleman, you know, we'll like bump on the street, and then it'll turn into one of those romances where he has to say, I don't know how to quit you. I know that was a cowboy movie. It's a different kind of part of America, but you know what I mean. The ironic thing, and I've said this before in another video previously, every Southern gentleman I met in New York City. I didn't even meet them in the South. They were either visiting New York or they had moved to New York. But anyway, I digress. What I will say though about the South and about small towns like this, you always forget that most people are so much nicer in places like this. So on the apps, when I would, you know, say how are you to a guy, they would actually, most of the time, if not all of the time, say, how are you? Welcome to Savannah. Like, how, you know, and that's something that you forget and that you miss out on by living in a major city like New York City, or, you know, even living in Miami. I feel like most of the time that I'll say how are you to somebody, to a guy on an app, they'll be like, fine, good. And that's it. The conversation ends, and I'm like, I don't actually care how you are. I'm trying to like be polite and initiate a conversation. So it definitely is a nice vibe here that people in general are more, you know, thoughtful about their delivery. That being said, I did have a weird experience, which I'll get into later on. So even though I'm in the South, and the South is stereotypically conservative and anti-gay and all that stuff, Savannah is one of those little random gems that is very gay friendly. I think this is for a multitude of reasons. First off, there's a famous art and design school here. So of course, anytime there's a huge college campus presence in a town, that affects the rest of the town, right? And it tends to make the town more liberal, more youthful. And then the fact that it's an art school in particular, of course, art schools are, you know, basically always gonna lean liberal. But also this is a town that historically has always had this like eccentric reputation, an eclectic reputation in the South. So I think there's that element as well. So you do see rainbow flags here and there. Now, unsurprisingly, in terms of the apps, the ones where you match with people, I went through everybody on the apps in a 5 to 10 mile radius. I don't know, I want to say in like 10, 20 minutes. Not surprising, you know, most gay men in southern towns I think are gonna migrate to the major southern cities, a place like Atlanta maybe, or even move up to DC. The only guy I actually matched with was like 20 miles away, on the edge of South Carolina. So he wasn't even in Georgia, which I thought was pretty funny. That the one guy I matched with, not only was he not in Savannah, he was not even in the same state. There are a few gay bars and clubs here in Savannah. They're congregated in the same general area, which is where all the nightlife is in general, and a lot of restaurants. I didn't go this time around, but I have been in the past. I went a few years ago to a few of them, and there's nothing noteworthy or too special about them. They're kind of your average like dive bar or small gay club. And I remember that when it was a weekend and it was pretty unimpressive, like the crowd that turned out in terms of size. I chose not to go this time around because I'm actually here during the week. I purposely booked my date so that I would avoid a weekend, so that I would get a great deal financially. So between that and COVID, I was like, nobody's going to be at these bars if they're even open. So I chose not to go this time. So basically, my experience with gay dating in Savannah has really focused on the presence on these apps. Now, as I mentioned, for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised by how much more polite the guys were. But then it's like I jinxed it, I think, because then I started talking to this guy who was actually cool for the first few days that we were messaging, here and there. And he was a little pushy to hang out, but I always appreciate that because it never happens to me. I feel like I always encounter very passive, ambivalent men, which is like my biggest pet peeve with meeting guys. So, I entertained him and I was like, all right, maybe we should hang out. And I said something to him like, I leave, tomorrow's my last day, I don't have much to do, we should definitely hang out. And something in him switched, and I think he sent me a message that was like, I'm paraphrasing, but this is how I understood it. It wasn't very clear, but he said something like, oh, so you haven't hung out with anybody from these apps, and now it's your last day and you suddenly want to hang out. Something like that, and I had to reread it a few times because I didn't get it. I didn't get what he meant. And I think he was offended and assumed that he was kind of like my last resort because it was my last day. And I was like, I didn't come here for like a conquest, I came here just to enjoy the scenery, get a change of scenery. I was working every day from the hotel room here, and then the rest of the day I would explore Savannah. So it's not like my life doesn't revolve around these apps. So it was just kind of a weird thing that he launched at me. And I feel like this happens to me all the time, that then I found myself feeling like I had to defend myself to a total stranger, because it sucks to feel misunderstood or for somebody to, I also don't want to hurt people. So while I'm working on responding, he blocked me. And then I went to bed shortly after thinking about it, like, feeling odd about it. And I hate that feeling. I hate going to bed with something like that on your mind. And that's what I hate about these apps. I hate when you get into these situations where there's a misunderstanding or where you feel bad, and then hours later the next day, I was like, I did nothing wrong. Like, it's totally okay for me to say, hey, I'm actually free tomorrow. Do you want to hang out tomorrow? It's not like I dragged him along the entire week and suddenly I dipped last minute and flaked. Like, I was trying to meet him halfway. Kind of a bittersweet way to leave. It sucks when you have a nice experience on your own traveling somewhere, and then just one interaction with a guy in person on an app kind of leaves you feeling odd. But my conclusion is that Savannah, Georgia is not the easiest place for gay dating, but if you're already in a relationship, it's a wonderful, like, romantic getaway. And I think also for the college kids here, it must be a completely different experience, right? Because when you're in that bubble, you're exposed to a different environment. So I think for college-age guys, it's probably actually cool to be, if they like the South, if they like the ambiance of Savannah, but they actually can form some kind of gay community among their peers. But beyond that, I think being single here and living here must not be that easy. Towns like this, I think people in general, also straight people, have to develop a different mentality with dating, where they're open to dating somebody, like I said, the guy 20 miles away who lives on the edge of Georgia and South Carolina. Where I live in Miami, or even, having lived in New York City, having lived in LA, you kind of get conditioned to date people locally, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm not gonna, when I lived in New York City, I didn't even have a car because everyone takes the subway. So when you have that kind of framework, when that's how your life is and you never leave the island of Manhattan, you're not gonna be that open, I think, to dating a guy, dozens of miles away in suburban New Jersey or on Long Island, let's say. Most people aren't open to that, but I always have to remember when I come to smaller towns like this that it's a different framework. Everybody here drives. So for a little romantic trip, or if you want to just do a solo trip because you enjoy the architecture and lush places like Savannah, I definitely recommend it. My favorite town in America, but that's my review, I guess, on gay dating here, and look forward to the comments, guys.